What is the appeal of Reform UK?
I think for a lot of more right-wing voters, it offers an alternative to the Conservative Party. There's always been that sort of vacuum, particularly looking over in the 2000s, it was primarily UKIP. Now it does appear like the Brexit Party and now Reform UK have taken up that vacuum. But I don't see the appeal for most voters. Like you said, they only got 10% in one by-election and 13% in the other by-election. That was in Wellingborough, an incredibly Brexit area in Northamptonshire. And they didn't even, even if they didn't exist and all their votes went to the Tories, the Labour Party would have still won the seat. So it's difficult to see the actual impact that they're having when it actually comes to the real world of electoral politics.
However, the Red Wall, which of course much of it became the Blue Wall in the last election, also incredibly pro-Brexit. We have an election campaign coming up. Do you not think that this, their best by-election result ever, is a good basis to work from to start getting more Conservative votes?
I'm sure if you were in their campaign HQ, you'd definitely be encouraged by these results. But I think in the bigger scheme of things, it's really not that encouraging. 13% in an incredibly Brexit area, you'd be hoping to do a bit better than that. You look at the policy platform, it's stop the boats, net zero migration, cut 10% of cut 10% of costs from every government department. It's these big flashy headlines, but they don't actually have any substance behind them. They don't actually have a policy platform.
So do you see them as a force for good or evil in British politics?
I think democratic engagement is always good. I'd encourage everyone if they want to start a party and get involved in a party, great. It's healthy for democracy. But I think what they do to the political discourse in this country is quite reductive, and they're just a bit of an annoying fly. That can be got rid of with a bit of a slap. And I think that's all Conservatives really need to do. They just need to pump up a bit of the spin coming out from CCHQ, and they'll win back a lot of Reform voters.
But why do you think they're reductive? In what way?
Well, they say, if we get into government, we'll do net zero immigration. It doesn't take into account, the huge technical reforms that you actually have to encounter to do something like that. Or we're going to cut 10% of costs from all government departments. Okay, you're going to cut 10% of costs from an already underfunded Department of Education. These big, bold statements, but no actual implementation plan, no transition plan with the civil service. There's no actual substance behind these big ideas.
But don't you think that people want some of those things? Don't you think that they want to see perhaps not frontline cuts, but a cut in the number of civil service, perhaps, that are working in some of those departments? Perhaps they want to see some bold action on the boats being stopped. Perhaps some people don't like net zero policies. I mean, they are going to appeal to some people.
Yeah, but clearly it's looking at their electoral history, clearly it's a very small amount of people.
So you don't believe that their policies are wide enough appealing?
No, I think they're extremely niche, and the policies that they do have, like I said, have very little substance at all. They're a bit of a distraction. That's all they are.
And what about the kind of people that Reform have? I mean, do you think that they are good people that are in politics?
I think some of their candidates are incredibly bizarre. Most of them ex-Tory donors, they're conspiracy theorists. A lot of them are UKIP racists. You look at the exposés that have been done by various media outlets over the last few years. Some of the comments, particularly in the Northeast, by Reform UK staffers, were disgusting about migrants.
So who are the ex-UKIP racists that you're talking about?
I can't remember his name, but there was an excellent expose. I think it was done by The Guardian in the 2021 local election campaign. They infiltrated Reform UK, got some live footage of Richard Tice and a former UKIP staffer, which was then became a Reform UK staffer, saying some dreadful things. But even if you look at their candidate for Bedford, Maggie Moriando, she says that anyone who believes in climate change lacks critical thinking skills. I mean, sure, you can argue about how varying climate change is, but climate change is a real thing. Richard Tice, her own leader, has admitted that climate change is real. Does he lack critical thinking skills?
But I don't understand what your problem is with those views. I mean, I don't agree with those particular views, but the way in
the fact that anyone who believes that climate change exists lacks critical thinking skills.
But surely the way in which you engage and that you counter that is to have a debate about it, not to not have those kinds of people in politics. And if you are, or if one, not necessarily you, but if one is absolutely convinced that that position is a flawed position, well, isn't it good to have those people in politics so that you can debate them?
Not really if they're spreading misinformation and they're just wrong. I wouldn't select someone as my parliamentary candidate if they came out with things like that directly contradicted what I, as a leader of a party, would be saying. Richard Tice has admitted that climate change is a real thing. As a leader, I would not select a parliamentary candidate for Bedford who believes that anyone who believes in climate change doesn't have critical thinking skills. That's just silly.
But that's a different opinion. What's wrong with a different opinion in
It's not an opinion. Climate change does exist.
No, that is her opinion, though. That is her opinion.
Her opinion is wrong, Cristo. Climate change does exist.
Yes, I know. I'm not saying I agree with her opinion, but I agree with her right to be able to express that opinion and to have those sorts of opinions in politics. Now, I might think that that opinion is completely wrong. I might think that that opinion needs to be challenged, and perhaps that person needs to be, I don't know, put in their place to show that their opinion is wrong. But I'm not in favour of that person not having the chance to express that opinion on a political stage.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that there are many independent parties you can run for. But, if you're the leader of a party and you've said that climate change is real, and you've got parliamentary candidates running about on Twitter saying that climate change isn't real and anyone who believes it doesn't have critical thinking skills, you'd have to surely reconsider, is the Reform Party the party of opinions that need to be challenged, but, we need to give people a platform anyway. I don't think that's what they're aiming to be.
Well, I would suggest that that's one of their appeals. I mean, like it or loathe it, there is a view that this sort of consensus among the parties, and this complete lack of debate within the parties, and this complete lack of a diversity of opinion within the main parties, I think is turning people away from the Conservatives and Labour. So I would suggest that maybe having someone in a political party that has a different opinion that you might completely disagree with is one of the things that people are turning to a reform for. They're not turning against reform for that reason. That's precisely why they're turning in favour of reform.
I think if you don't think there's too much debate going on in the main political parties, you haven't been looking at the Labour Party much over the last couple of months, and even the Conservative Party. Both parties do have a fair amount of debate and fallout between their various factions. And, clearly people aren't that appealed by Reform UK, because even in a Brexit seat, they could only get 13%. So clearly the appeal really isn't there.
In what way are they conspiracy theorists? That was the other thing you said that was interesting.
Did I?
Yeah.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, I think I just wrote it as you said it. You said it's full of UKIP racists and conspiracy theorists.
Oh, yeah. Conspiracy theorists. Like climate change doesn't exist, and anyone who does lacks critical thinking skills. To say that climate change doesn't exist is a conspiracy theory. I mean, look at the LBC interview with Richard Tice. There's 5 or 6 different parliamentary candidates with a wild range of opinions that COVID was a scam, climate change is a scam, all of these things. And Richard Tice just sits there and kind of goes, oh, well, and they are conspiracy theorists.
Well, again, I think that it's a valid opinion to say, I don't believe that COVID was a scam, but I believe that the opportunism around COVID was horrific. The political opportunism, the opportunism to create rules and regulations that I think that were unwelcome to a lot of people, I think was absolutely outrageous around COVID. Now, again, things like vaccine passports, all those things, I think, fueled the idea that there was some conspiracy behind all of this. Now, the only way you're going to be able to challenge that is to have it in open debate, surely.
Sure.
I mean, it just sounds like you don't want there to be open debate on certain things.
Well, I think on certain things it's very difficult to debate. To say that COVID was a scam, that's a pretty difficult argument to make. And if you're trying to run a serious political party, which I assume Richard Tice and David Bull and Ben Habib, the leadership of the party, are trying to, I wouldn't be allowing parliamentary candidates to run around saying that COVID was a scam and climate change isn't real.
But can is it acceptable to say that the reaction to COVID was a scam and outrageous?
I think it depends which part you're looking at. it depends which part you're looking at. There was such a broad reaction.
Well, I mean, I don't know, getting ourselves into absolutely billions and pounds worth of debt, councils deciding to, I don't know, close roads and bring in different regulations as a result of it. Things like vaccine passports being brought in so that therefore, without having some sort of documentation that you have had a vaccine, you can't go to the pub. I mean, all of those sorts of things are, I would argue, it's a valid position to say, I believe that that was an overreach.
But they didn't say it was an overreach. They said it was a scam. So I would encourage, I can't remember the name of the candidate, but if you look at the LBC interview, I'm sure if that individual was able to, go and look into the eyes of the COVID bereaved and go, it was a scam, then, I'd probably respect them a bit more. But they wouldn't, because they like to say these big things on Twitter, and then they just don't back them up in real life. You can't have conspiracy theories.
Respectfully, you've not backed up a lot of what you've said with actual names of people that have said.
Well, I'd encourage you to watch the LBC interview. It was a fantastic piece of journalism.
All right, listen, nice to talk to you, though. Thank you. That's Andy McDonald, the political commentator, who has quite short shrift with Reform UK.